Okay guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode I take a look at the 1984 film Supergirl with Helen Slater and Faye Dunaway and Peter O'Toole and Mia Farrow. Surprise, surprise. It has a 10% rating on the tomato meter and a 26% on the audience score. 49,201 ratings say that it deserves that 26% on the audience score. It is definitely rotten. I would never attempt to argue that it's not rotten. This was bad, and I knew it was bad in 1984 when I saw it. I actually saw this in the theater as a 13-year-old. I think there was nothing else to do that day, and I was in the habit, along with my sister, of seeing matinee movies at the time where we lived. It was cheap. It was $1. I ended up seeing this in the theater. I had no idea it would be this bad, and I walked out of it feeling that, like, wow, I saw something really bad, but it didn't bother me because I paid $1, and we saw other bad movies in the same theater, and at the time, $1, it didn't leave you feeling bad. You got to eat some popcorn and everything, and we even snuck our own popcorn in and did that kind of hijinks back then. So anyway, I don't have bad memories of this. I have the distinct memory that I walked out commenting to my sister at the time that this was bad, and she didn't disagree. Now, for anybody that says the current Supergirl show on the CW is bad, well, I haven't actually tried to watch that. It's not my thing. I'm not really into those CW shows. But I'll tell you what, I'll bet it's a lot better than this. Even its, most offensive episodes on CW are probably well above this in every way. This one features a cousin of Superman who comes from some offshoot planet of Krypton. Not Krypton, but some similar other planet that's in the same empire or whatnot. And she's a cousin of Superman, and she flies off to save her parents who are, their community or their planet is dying because of some power source that is lost to them, which ends up being on Earth. She flies off to Earth. Now, the funny part is she somehow crashes on Earth in a lake and then springs out of the lake in her full Supergirl outfit, knowing how to fly, knowing how to use all her powers, and wanting to find her cousin Superman. It's completely ridiculous in a comic book type of way, but that's the least of this movie's problems. Now, I'm mentioning how she shows up at the beginning because at the end of the movie, after the plot is finished, and she wins the day, so to speak, she goes back to her Kryptonian world by flying back into the lake. And in the cut of the movie that I saw in the theater, she actually flies down through the water in the lake and actually goes through some kind of weird time warp or some kind of space warp wormhole and ends up back on her Kryptonian world with her power source to save them. It's a very weird ending. It's unexplained how this lake functions as some kind of doorway to the Kryptonian galaxy, but that's what happens. Now, I know other people that have watched this on streaming or on VHS or DVD or whatnot since then have reported that it ends with her just flying into the lake, and it's assumed that she's going to find her crashed spaceship to fly away. I didn't see it for myself like that, but I know in the version I saw in the theater, she actually flies through some portal and ends up back in Kryptonian space through the lake. So it's very strange. There's obviously more than one cut of this film. At least the ending is different. So there are so many things ridiculous and plot hole wise and logic wise, and just the big bad of this film, the villain, is played by Faye Dunaway, who is a witch on Earth, and she's into witchcraft, and she, in her own words, she feels that she can accept nothing less than world domination. Those are her exact words. It's Faye Dunaway, and she's a witch, and she hatches up a plot to like make some local stud in town fall in love with her with this witchcraft spell, and somehow Supergirl interferes with this, and that's the plot of the movie. Basically, they are fighting over the affections of just a random guy in a town that they consider to be hot. It's very strange. It derails the whole original plot in which Supergirl came to Earth to save her parents and their dying world. that they just totally forget about that, and so does Supergirl for much of this movie until the very end. And it is very strange. And when I saw this in the theater, I thought the weirdest part about it was that Supergirl, when she's Supergirl and she's in her costume, she has blonde hair. And all of a sudden, when she wants to become like her normal schoolgirl alter ego, who is a schoolgirl for some reason, she suddenly has brunette hair. And then when she turns back into Supergirl, she's back into blonde, long blonde hair again. And the movie makes no attempt to explain this transformation of her hair color and her hairstyle. It just changes right along with her Supergirl outfit. It is completely strange, and even in the movie theater at the time, I was like, "What? What is going on here?" Again, I was 13, but still, that was unacceptable. I'm like, why is her hair changing color? So, but that's still the least of the movie's problems. Everything else is as ridiculous as that. Everything is just as bad as that. And there's a lot of blatant product placement in this. There is, it's very funny to watch now because there is the company. I don't know the name of the company. Perhaps it is A&W Root Beer. A&W Root Beer actually has a lot of product placement here, and their first product placement is to have one of the thugs in the opening scenes of this movie wear an A&W Root Beer t-shirt. And, this wouldn't be done today because the person that they're putting the A&W t-shirt on for product placement is actually somebody that's attempting to rape the main character and is dispatched by Supergirl quite easily, of course. It's a very strange place to put A&W product placement. It would never be done today. And again, there's another scene in the movie between Supergirl and her dad, played by Peter O'Toole, in which Peter O'Toole is like being held in the Phantom Zone, and Supergirl goes there, and Peter O'Toole is like spraying water in his mouth from a spray bottle as though it's like some kind of nourishing water spray, and he keeps asking Supergirl if she doesn't want a squirt or another squirt. Are you sure you don't want a squirt? And it's just to have product placement to like say the squirt. In other words, it's product placement for Squirt Cola, which is also from the same company as A&W Root Beer. And there's another product placement scene that's very blatant with Popeye's chicken. And all the action sequences in this movie are set, it's all filmed in Pinewood Studios, London, and this is an actual British film production, although it's supposed to take place in an American small town. And so there's this little fictional town setting, very small, inside Pinewood Studios, and it features a Popeye's chicken in which Supergirl has to appear on a couple of times before she does her action sequences. And it's very blatant and in your face, and it was even blatant and in your face if you were a 13-year-old watching this in 1984. So it's pretty bad. So again, let's look at this. We have a 26% audience score, 49,000 of these audience reviews. This is still irrelevant because the first one on my list right here is from October 21st of 2019, and surprisingly, let's get right into this. It's 5 stars. Honestly, I liked the movie, even though others say it's not good. Slater's performance is amazing. I don't care what anyone thinks. I personally liked Supergirl. Fantastic. I don't know what to say to that, so I'm going to move on. Well, first I'm going to give you my star rating. I think this is like half a star. It's just half a star. It can't quite reach 1 star. I don't know what to say. I saw this in the theater when it was out. I would have given it half a star back then as well. This is half a star. Somebody was paid. People that worked on the production at Pinewood Studios, they were paid, so it had some economic benefit to London or England or wherever this was filmed. So there's that. So I'd give it half the star. Otherwise, as a movie, it's a complete zero, a complete failure. 1 star. Oof. Watched this today on Netflix. I know it was the 80s, so special effects aren't great. I can look past that, but man, the acting and plot were just awful. Yeah, the acting and plot, Faye Dunaway, Peter O'Toole, Mia Farrow, all of these people, these actors, actress was wasted. Why were they in this film? I don't know. Who convinced them to do this? I don't know. Did they realize what they were doing? I don't know. These are big unknowns. Yeah. 1 star. The effects are cheesy, and Supergirl's wide-eyed, cheery heroine simply isn't interesting to watch for an hour and a half. Yeah, and it's not interesting to watch her do battle with what are supposed to be villains or monsters conjured up by Faye Dunaway's witch character. It's not interesting because obviously they ran out of money for the effects. The budget wasn't there. So there's some very bad CGI, and almost you have to use your imagination to imagine what Supergirl is fighting. It's very bizarre. It's like something, even a YouTuber today wouldn't have a production value this bad from something they shot at home. That's how bad it is. You watch Supergirl fight like an imaginary demon of some type that is all distorted and done with like the cheapest effects and lens tricks you can imagine. And it's supposed to be riveting and suspenseful. And Supergirl is like crying out in pain, and it's so ridiculous, the sound of it. I don't know if cheesy is the right word. It's like the budget just wasn't there, so they cobbled together whatever they could to make it work. It's almost, but not quite one of those films that's so bad it's good. If you drank, maybe like 10% of it would be funny, but it's not like Batman and Robin where the whole thing would be funny. This isn't worth it even to just make fun of it. There's just not enough there. Um, 4 stars. I love it. You have to embrace the camp. There's not even camp that works here. It's not funny, like I said. 5 stars. I really think this film is underrated. I loved it as a kid and still do now. Helen Slater is kick-ass as Kara. Faye Dunaway's Selina is brilliant as a creepy witch wannabe, consumed with the desire for Kara's powers. And Peter O'Toole is, well, Peter O'Toole. Sorry, I have to say no. I was a kid at the time I saw this in the theater, and I would have just laughed at your kid self if you had been there, because I disagree. This was bad. Um, half a star. Keeping in mind this movie was made in the 80s, you would think it would be so bad it's good. Not so. It went past good and went right back to bad. The special effects were lousy. By 1984, it should have been really good. Star Wars had good effects, and that was made in 1977. And the flying sequence was terrible. You can actually see the wires. It's as if the film crew didn't care to spend the time or energy to hide the wires. The story, the plot, and the premise was horrible. Yeah, you don't have to compare this to 77's Star Wars. I was there at the time in the theater. You know what I was expecting? I was expecting something along the lines of Superman 3, because Superman 3 was in the theaters in this same time period, either right before, I'm thinking it was in the theaters right before this, and that had Richard Pryor, and I saw it at that same theater, matinee, paid $1 for it, just as the same as this one, and I came out of it as a 13-year-old satisfied from Superman 3 in the theater. This was complete garbage, and it was very disappointing because I was expecting that Supergirl, not that I'm into Supergirl, but it would at least entertain me as much as Superman 3 did, and it completely didn't. And same theater, same time period, same me. So yeah, don't try to compare this to 77 Star Wars. Just compare it to Superman 3, and this fails, just completely fails. 4 stars. Without part with Faye Dunaway, excellent. But with this part is watchable, and Helen Slater is perfect as Supergirl, especially when she learns her power. This broken English is all over the place, and I don't know what country they live in, but they should just stick to the CW show, because I can guarantee you, even not having watched it myself, it's better than this. 1.5 stars. Though it has inexplicably committed performances, decent music from Jerry Goldsmith, trying to copy John Williams' style, and we finally get a look at the Phantom Zone after only seeing it as a two-dimensional square back in the first 2 Superman movies, Supergirl comes off as sexist and boring. The love interest has zero personality, the action sequences lack suspense, the effects are inconsistent, ranging from okay to painfully obvious. They just sped up footage or filmed this on a blue screen. Yeah, it is like, a lot of people in 2019 will accuse a movie of being, sexist or whatever. This one, yeah, it could be correctly labeled as that, because Supergirl is supposed to be Supergirl, right? Like the female version of a superhero. She's supposed to be, Superman's cousin. She's supposed to be, in her own words, somebody that's not afraid of anybody. She doesn't take anything from anybody. And yet, this character not only proclaims that she doesn't take any nonsense from anybody and she's not scared easily, she literally says that. And then in another scene, she's scared of a plastic skeleton, and she comes off as a frightened schoolgirl in her superhero outfit and persona, and she needs to be almost saved by a strong man, and she is fighting essentially another female, an older female character, Faye Dunaway. Maybe you could call that a MILF at the time. She's fighting her for the affections or control over an attractive man. So yes, this one is accurately being accused of being sexist because it is 1984 sexism that was acceptable at the time. It isn't done right, though. It's not that that's what made this a bad movie. It's just that that kind of level of sexism was in a lot of good movies too. It's just that, yeah, that is accurate in this case. The love interest has zero personality. Yeah, the love interest is just a construction worker that's under the spell of Faye Dunaway's witch character. He's just a meathead character with no personality. He's just supposed to have strong muscles, and that's why Faye Dunaway needs him so badly. That's how shallow this is. Again, it's how sexist it is. The effects, like I said, they're really bad, like they just ran out of money. And the music, I can't comment on that because it's just completely forgettable to me. Nothing about it is memorable, so I don't know. 1 star. We're in November of 2018. Bad superhero effort overflowing with cheese and silliness. Yeah, it's really silly how you want to talk about weird. It's not cheese and it's not silly, but it's very weird. There is a scene in this in which Supergirl, like, when she's in her she's in her schoolgirl persona at the boarding school, that she, for some weird plot reason, she just joins a boarding school and nobody notices that she's a student there now. Very strange. In any case, she's in her dorm room and she sees a reflection of herself in a hand mirror, or it might be a small mirror mounted on a wall, and she like stares at herself like she's in love with herself, and she leans into the mirror and she like starts to give herself a kiss, like she's going to make out with herself, like put her lips to the mirror glass and make out with herself in the mirror. And then it cuts away to something else, and it's like, what? What was the director trying to do there? Was that some fantasy he had with Helen Slater, and somebody else in the editing room like put a stop to it? I think that's what happened. That would have been interesting to me as a 13-year-old. I would have said, hey, maybe that's a direction we should go in. But nope, it got cut off real fast. But it's in there still. If it had been my movie, I would have just cut that completely. I wouldn't have left anything of her in front of that mirror beyond her just looking at it for a second. No, they left in the part where she's actually trying to kiss herself in the mirror. Very weird. I don't know what's going on with that. So let's move on. Let's see, 2.5 stars. While the actors try really hard to make things entertaining, the cinematography is competently shot and the music well composed, it is ultimately not enough. The script has too many flaws, the plot is too reliant on one thing, and the pacing is uneven. It's not a horrible outing, but it's not the best either. Excuse me, it's not horrible. This is like the bottom of the barrel. This is like competing for Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. It really is. You're way out there if you think this is anything over half a star. 1 star, poor set design, poor props, poor storyline. Helen Slater is a good Supergirl, but the director and writers were just too cautious and afraid to take risks. Again, are they referring to that mirror scene? Like, what risk were we going to take? She was going to make out with her alter ego in the mirror? I mean, I don't know what to make of that line I just read, that the directors and writers were just too cautious and afraid to take risks. Interesting. Let's continue. Movie is hardly watchable. Story is convoluted and poorly executed. Supergirl has a bunny running around her as she sleeps in the forest. Yeah, that's another thing I forgot about. She sleeps in the forest and a bunny's running around her. It's like the director had a fantasy like she's supposed to be some virginal schoolgirl type and he wanted to make her sexual too. I just get that vibe from it, like it's almost like a teenage boy was directing this. It was his fantasy somehow. I don't know. Let's move on. Half a star. We're in June of 2018. Terrible. This makes me want to rewatch Spider-Man 3 over and over. Yeah, bringing this up in the context of Spider-Man 3, this wouldn't even be an advertisement on a black and white TV screen in Spider-Man 3 that was like just caught up in the carnage somewhere in Spider-Man 3. This is not even in the same ballpark or universe or whatever you want to call it, aside from the fact that it's Marvel and DC you're mixing. Yeah, Spider-Man 3 is like an Academy Award winner. It swept the Academy Awards in every category compared to this movie, yes. 3 stars, dated vision with a workable structure that assures potentiality of rooted connection. What? I don't know what you're saying. I have no idea. I'm going to skip the rest of that. I just read a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo. I don't know what came out of my mouth. Sorry. 4 stars. Really a low rating. Well, then I'm going to have to disagree. I saw this on TV. I enjoyed it. If you saw it on TV and you were like 7 or 8, okay, maybe. 2.5 stars. Helen Slater, a talented and handsome woman, and the character of Supergirl, a character with much potential, both deserved a much, much better script than the one which they have employed here. A very talented supporting cast was also squandered. I find it's funny how they call Helen Slater a talented and handsome woman. At the time when she was at that age, she was considered pretty hot. Like, she was a very pretty, attractive, sexy, whatever you want to call it, woman. When you say handsome woman, you're trying to say maybe the older Helen Slater, the one you'll see in her current picture on Rotten Tomatoes. That's what you would say is a handsome woman. There's a big difference there. So no, this is the sexy Helen Slater from back in the day in the 80s. She was in other movies and she looked like that too. Don't use the word handsome. I'm just offended by that. Because even as a 13-year-old in the theater seeing this, she was sexy to me. So let's move on, I guess. 4 stars. You know it was a good movie, so I don't see why people are not for this movie. Let's see, there was nice action, nice graphics, etc. Come to think of it, they have the TV show of Supergirl, and I'm all for it. No, the Supergirl TV show on CW, I've heard a lot of bad things about it, but guess what? It's a lot better than this. It is. 0.5 star. 2 hours of my life I'll never get back, and people thought Superman 3 would be the worst superhero movie of 1984. Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure this was out at the same time period. Superman 3 was better. I know, I watched it in the same movie theater, and this one was the disappointment of the two. 3.5 stars. Despite its obvious flaws, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Jerry Goldsmith's score is outstanding, and some of the special effects are fantastic. As shame the story didn't fit well together and the nostalgia on this stands. You're out to lunch. There is no special effect in this that's outstanding. None whatsoever. Even compared to Superman 3, this is a big fail. It's like they didn't have the budget. It's laughable. What do you mean the story didn't fit well together? Yeah, when you take like a ham sandwich and you like rip it into pieces and throw it on the floor, it doesn't seem to fit well together anymore, does it? That's like a big understatement here. 5 stars. We're in November of 2017. I love this movie. Helen Slater did a remarkable job as Supergirl. The flying scenes were especially incredible. Very well done. I absolutely appreciate the special effects in this movie as opposed to all the CGI nowadays. I would have loved to see a Supergirl 2, possibly with a guest appearance by Superman. This movie is fantastic. Well, first of all, Christopher Reeve said that he was just busy. That's why he couldn't make a cameo appearance in this, and that's why they used a picture of him as Superman as his cameo appearance. I don't know if I believe that. In any case, CGI, if you're going to call this CGI, no, it's horrible. It's not better than anything now. It's not even better than stuff from back in the day. This is not very well done. The flying scenes are not very well done. And how do you explain, what part of the CGI explains how Supergirl transforms into a schoolgirl in her schoolgirl outfit and her hair goes from being long and blonde and flowing to being brunette and curled and shorter? And then when she goes back into Supergirl, her hair is long and blonde and flowing again, and the brunette hair is gone. How do you explain that? Even within the Superman lore, you can't explain that. So don't even get started on that. It's a complete fail, really. 5 stars. For an 80s superhero film, it's not bad. Well, a lot of 80s superhero films are bad. but some are a lot more bad than others. 4.5 stars. Not as bad as everyone says. It's now pretty much a classic. Really, it is. Okay. Maybe you're confusing this with the CW show. 1.5 stars. What happens when you take talented performers like Faye Dunaway and Peter O'Toole and put them in a Superman spinoff? Well, obviously, if I'm asking you, of course, get a piece of shit. The first problem comes right away, as you are given no exposition whatsoever, instead given very brief introductions to new characters, as if we are expected to know who the hell they are. A girl named Kara Zor-El, Helen Slater, is part of a community of surviving Kryptonians in a pocket of transdimensional space. Yeah, that's one way to put it. I mean, maybe I'd have to watch it 2 or 3 times to really understand the details on that. My impression was that it was like part of the Kryptonian Empire, but not on Krypton. But if it was in some kind of Kryptonian pocket of space, okay, maybe. I do know that the set had them, their Kryptonian environment was basically like held together, protected from space by a piece of clear plastic that you could tell it was clear plastic. I do know that part. Anyway, 2 stars. Helen Slater was a really good choice to portray Supergirl, and her adaptation to Earth was quite charming. On the other hand, the film was very prone to bad pacing, sometimes going too slow and sometimes going too fast without even bothering to justify the inexplicable dark spots of its meager plot. The witchcraft element felt a little out of place, although it would have helped if the action scenes were more consistently compelling at least. Still, this 80s B movie isn't without its charms. Okay, here's an idea, here's a question. Let's say it is believable that Faye Dunaway is a witch and she's on Earth and she has powers and she's the big bad. And then Supergirl comes to Earth in a small town. Okay, is it believable that both of these characters just happen to be in the same small town for no apparent reason? Yeah, that's a plot fail, isn't it? That's just one of many. 1.5 stars. It's a pity that this movie is so terrible because Helen Slater makes a good Supergirl and there's a fine cast around her, but the plot is poor, little makes sense, and the whole thing often comes off as some kind of unintentional spoof. Yeah, the first scene where she fights 2 would-be rapists, that is like an unintentional spoof. Let me set it up for you. She shows up in her Supergirl outfit. She's standing there on a city street. 2 guys come up to her. One guy, it's obvious that I don't remember the exact dialogue, but they want to like have their way with her. So the first guy, she grabs him and just like throws him through a storefront window. Then what does the second guy do? Does he turn around and run away like any normal person would do if that happened to them? No, he pulls out a pocket knife and threatens her again so she can dispatch him too, like in the same fashion. That's like a spoof. Or don't forget, he's also wearing an A&W t-shirt on his chest before we get a shot of that before she dispatches him. Okay, that's like a spoof to me. 2 stars, LOL. This is awful, but it has become amusing for all the wrong reasons. It's fun to watch with a buddy and count all the things that go wrong with this film. Still worth a watch if you like to see an absolute train wreck of a movie for the gits and shiggles. Yeah. 2.5 stars, stupid but not as awful as I expected. 1 star, I remember watching this as a kid and believing it was an awful film. Perhaps watching it as an adult would change my perception. Nope, it's still awful. The theme song is good and I like Helen Slater as Supergirl. The other actresses tried to salvage this film. Unfortunately though, just about everything else about the film was wretched. Yeah, how does Supergirl just like go to a random boarding school, a high school boarding school, somehow get the uniform by unexplained means and just like become a student and get a dorm room and nobody notices anything unusual going on? Kind of odd, isn't it? Isn't it like we're missing a whole TV show in there somewhere about that? Very odd. 5 stars, great show, Supergirl. 1 star, no wonder they killed her in Crisis following this. Referring to the comics, I guess. This film, yeah, 10% and 26%. It deserves both of those. It's not, I recommend not watching it because it's not funny enough or weird enough that you'll have a good time drinking or even smoking dope, I suppose. But it is like just to be mentioned and memed on and referenced in regards to maybe future superhero stuff we're going to be put through. And I'm sure we're going to see bad stuff in the near future. from DC no less. And just remember, they've done worse, and they'll probably want to forget about this one. So in any case, I'll see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.